be not only get this honor, but to go in with Kip, who was, kind of part of that first great team you had here?
That was special when I got the call to come, to the Overland Park, and Tom Gordon called me, Tom Jacobs called me, and he said Kip's going in. Now that was a little bit exciting because that's uncommon that you would have something like that. But I was excited about the whole trip and the opportunity to see so many people, and it's quite an honor. And it's not an I, it's not a me, it's a we. And I represented so many players and coaches in this great university, and the opportunities to be in that position, and then being out there with Kip and Matt Donahue, who pitched for me at North Carolina State. Those two guys, I think, had the most innings pitched at their respective schools. I don't know if that was a compliment or they were upset that I burned them up so much, but it was a blast, and so many wonderful people there. There was Mark McGuire went in this class, Hubie Brooks went in this class, Scott Boris, who was coming off a great deal for Tarek Skubal, he was there. David Price and Vanderbilt went in, and got to see so many coaches. Jim Morris, who had been at Miami, and Coach Leggett and I had a great visit, and Coach Corbin was there. Coach DeBryan from Arkansas goes in. It goes on, and we just, for like 48 hours, we were wide open, but it was really a great celebration.
Where does this rank? I mean, this is like Pro Football Hall of Fame, Basketball Hall of Fame? This is it.
Well, one of my daughters kind of thinks I'm a big deal, but I remind her all the time that I'm really not a big deal. It's because of where you were and who you were with. And I'm not trying to throw out a humble card. I'm just telling you the truth that, I surrounded myself with great coaches and players and working at a great university, and there were opportunities. And in many cases, when things aren't great, you get blamed for it. And then sometimes you get credit when it's really not about you. And this is not about me. It's just about so many wonderful people I've been around and the opportunities. But Justin Smoke went out with us, and that's monumental. He doesn't leave the low country. If it's not fishing, golfing, or hunting, he's not leaving. So he was out there too. So it was a blast. When I was younger, playing in college at NC State, I wanted to play in the big leagues, like a lot of young people. But there comes a point, and it was my junior year, when I think I was hitting 265 with about 3 homers, that probably wasn't in the cards. And I always heard that, average players to below average players would make good managers and coaches. Mm-hmm. So I thought I had a shot. So I went in that direction. But I never would have thought about being in that group. And being in this class, this is College Hall of Fame class, and watching everybody go in, it's like, I'm not in that group. I'm honored to be here, but I still have so much respect for what they've accomplished. I never felt like that you couldn't accomplish things. I never was arrogant that we'll do this and we'll do that. Didn't talk about a lot of goals and that kind of thing with my team. I did talk about positioning. If we do all things the right way, if we do them as well as we can, and you're as good as you possibly can be, there's an opportunity. But you play other great people too. And that was sort of the focus. But when I came to Carolina in the summer of '96, my first season was '97, remember who I followed. And Bobby Richardson had been here for 7 years, taken a couple of teams to the World Series, got to the finals. Coach Raines was here for 20-something years, tremendous success, been to the College World Series. I felt like it was a great opportunity to follow a great tradition. I didn't have to build it. I just had to build upon it. And that gave me confidence that we could do it. It had been done. And, winning a championship like we did, 10 and 11, and getting there a couple other times along the way, a lot of good teams just don't get in that position. So you have to be fortunate. There has to be some great things that happen. So that's the way I felt about it. The thing that I liked the least about Kip, he was a hard get. He grew up across the bridge. And, when I got here, I'm like, well, I got to get Kip Balknight in this program. I mean, he's the best player in the state, maybe one of the best in the Southeast. And it wasn't easy. We had to work extremely hard to get him. But once we got him, I knew that who knew how many he would win and to be the Golden Spikes Award winner, but he was going to be good for this program. And other guys were going to follow, and they did. But he when he pitched, he was laser focused, and he could. I told people this all the time. He could win 2-0. He could win 8-7. Most pitchers can't do both. He could do it either way because winning was the ultimate. When he wasn't pitching, sometimes in the dugout it was difficult because I was trying to manage a game, and he was managing harder than I was, and he was in my way most of the time, inspiring players. But that was an elevation part of the program. You talk about people who make an impact. He was impactful. You go through the years, I can name a lot of guys, and what Michael Roth did when he came into the program. It was about the end result, not about you, and it's not the name on the back, it's the name on the front. You can say it, but do you mean it? And I think that made a lot of difference in a lot of teams that we had here because a lot of times as the head coach, you go play in a series or regionals or super regionals, and you'd often wonder if your team was as good as the other team. The thing that, it is cyclical. I believe that. That it happens that way. There's ups and downs, and we're talking about men's basketball this morning a little bit with one of my friends, and just a couple years ago, Lamont won 26 games. So do you forget how to coach? No. Things happen, and, for whatever reason, not everybody, there's 16 teams in the SEC, and, not everybody can be in that mode. But I know tonight the men and women play at the same time at 8:30, so I follow it closely, and I live vicariously through what's going on. I love being here, and you want everybody to do well and to win, and you check the softball scores if you're not there, or you see how equestrian team's doing. That's just what it's all about.